Happy October, everybody, and welcome to another energy read. So, in this video, we're going to be looking over the month of October. For those of you who are new to my channel, my name is Natalie. I call myself the esoteric practitioner. And a big reason why I do that is because I do have a spiritual holistic practice where I work with clients one-on-one, both virtual and in person. And we look at, you know, just like a reading, if you will. But what my area of focus is assisting you on your journey and helping you recognize where you are at, what you're working through, helping you understand your inner psychology, helping you understand what you're holding in consciousness. And so it very much is, my journey began with understanding the self through my innate gifts, which was channeling and mediumship. And through that, I was developing a practice that I'm now sharing with you all as one-on-one clients. And sometimes I work with couples, I work with groups and entrepreneurs. So it really just depends on where you're at and where you find me in your life. And so, we work together on discovering a deeper truth or a deeper meaning of how you're perceiving things that are all around you. So that is a little bit about my practice. And so let's look at the month of October and we'll get into it. So part of being a practitioner is really putting things to practice, right? So through self-discovery of what my abilities were showing me, I have applied that to everyday life. And so again, that's another reason why I talk about the practitioner. And one of those is understanding, the buzzword now is the shadow self, kind of, stemmed from Carl Jung. Um, you know, Another way of saying it is the lower self. Oops, excuse me, I touched the mic. But either way, we're looking at, from my perspective, we're looking at polarities within ourselves. So, that could be considered, the principle of polarity in Hermetics. And so we're looking at the versions of ourselves that are either on, a high vibrational frequency, or the parts of us that are bonded to things that are keeping us in lower frequencies and lower vibrations. And so we're when people kind of explain externally, like we pointing fingers and everything at stuff, what we're not taking accountability for is the parts of us that are perceiving things. So we can see things from a higher perspective and we can see things from a lower perspective. And the beauty of October is that it's actually purging this lower part of us that's bringing things a little bit more into balance. So, to talk about, I guess, the first theme would be the shadow self, or that lower polarity version of us, that version of us that perhaps is attracted or aligned with heaviness. Some people use the word darkness. There's different ways to express what it is, right? Because we all have a different way of perceiving things. So that is the version that collectively is going to be showing up in a big way, at least in the first half of the month. Now, as I've said in previous energy reads, is that we're passing the baton. So there have been individuals that have already met this energy, if you are some of those that are watching this, where you started purging a lot of your shadow self, that just started naturally coming up and you weren't even aware. Now you could be those that are already doing some of the work. And yet, this month is kind of like saying, like, hey, you've got to see what's tipping your scale. You can hear my dog going in and out of her doggy door. I have the best dog. She's part German Shepherd, part weenie, and it was a total accident. I'll maybe share some videos or some pictures of her because she's the most cutest thing ever. Anyways, so in October, we're bringing it a little bit more into balance. So the first half of the month, if you've already moved to this, you're going to be meeting different energies that I'll speak about in a little bit. But the the individuals who are reading this, or at least watching this, if you will, you are going to be possibly, this could be months behind, and you're ahead of the game watching this in preparation for what's going to be showing up. And the big word that came up for, this month is, at least the first half of the month, is passive aggressiveness. Now, that could be showing up in you, and you're not even aware that you could be a little bit passive aggressive. Or, for those of you who are projectors in a way, didn't even projectors from like human design. And I'm not a human design practitioner, so let's just make that clear. But I do have some knowledge on a very little bit of it. But in any case, it could be that you've been projecting as a projector, piercing into people's personas and unaware that you're actually matching who they are. And so you are being a little passive aggressive yourself, but because you lack accountability or self-awareness, you're not aware that you're actually showing their personality. So that gets pretty complex. I'm just kind of giving you an example for some people who didn't know that they can be passive aggressive. Some people have complete unawareness for it, while others were just taught that that's a normal behavior to be or to do, and to be a little bit snide or, again, passive aggressive, snarky, sarcastic and belittling. And they just thought it was everyday behaviors at how you function in the world, but it doesn't align with kindness, right? Now we can say, well, we got to get a sense of humor, blah, 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 but that goes into a whole other jam that, we're not going to address today. What you want to start considering is, how are you moving through this passive aggressive energy? Now, let's talk about Libra, right? Because Libra is all about the scales. So some of you that are going to be showing a little bit more passive aggressiveness, it's going to be counterbalanced with assertiveness. So those of you who have lacked a voice, and it even could be a part of you that's completely split and divided, where there's a part of you that's acting out of passive aggressiveness because of other people. And so that there's a version of you that's going to start getting more assertive, or there's a version of you that's never had a voice or didn't allow yourself a voice because of all the passive aggressiveness out there, or because of all of the aggressiveness out there. Finding your voice and looking at being more assertive, because the energies right now are calling us to be more in balance. That is very much Libra. Balance brings about harmony, and so we've got to kind of start assessing which part of the scales are we, dabbling in. It is my philosophy that it is important to know our lower self, to know what we're functioning in, so that we can assess, is this the type of environment that is conducive to where I want to be in my life, or how I want to act, think, and behave? And if it's not, why am I feeding this? I was talking to my little one the other day about fears and everything. And so, what are we feeding? And how can we change, adjust, or alchemize? I don't talk to her like that, but how can we change and adjust, or for some of you, alchemize to a higher perspective, so that we can align with our morals, our values, and our ethics? And I've talked about that a lot. But in any case, that is something to understand, that, this first half of the month is bringing out parts of us that need to come more into balance. But we have to first become aware of what's fueling us, or what is fueling us can be seen in many ways, but a lot of it could be motivating us in an unhealthy manner, which causes or impacts us to become a little bit more passive aggressive, or in a different way finds us to become, I'm no longer going to be that cowardly lion, a reference to the beautiful esoteric movie of The Wizard of Oz, where we're no longer going to be that cowardly lion, and we're going to start speaking up and saying, okay, you know what, enough's enough. I'm done with this. It's not conducive to how I want to align in my life. And so, so that's just where we got to start looking at. And so the next theme is a big about relationships, which, makes sense because Libra is all about relationships. So if you haven't noticed, if you've been with me for a while, I do very much align with the cycles of the moon. I very much align with cycles of, astrology. It is another art and a practice of the esoteric studies. So that is one of my areas that I do focus on. But it also is just, I've noticed that that's what I align with. So if you're not somebody who believes in astrology, what I would consider then is just look at cycles and patterns that are can be completely similar, right, but different in ways of expression. It doesn't mean that astrology has no validity, but could it be possible that there's another practice out there that are kind of saying the same things, but without such labels? So, in any case, you know, this is a month also about relationships. Now, again, this is about the first half of the month. I want to say about the second week. Again, if you're on this timeline, unless you're, going to be coming up to this energy. But, the thing that was um, channeled many times ago, but I'm getting reminded of it, is that we don't have relationships with people per se. We have, or people, or for instance, animals sometimes, we don't have relationships with them. We're actually having a relationship with the universe or the cosmic energy or the unseen source or, however we want to word it. And we're having this conversation or we're having this relationship with this unseen energy that's showing up in formation in people. Let's use people as the example, right? And so we're actually being shown what we're still holding on to. And they are a example. They are an example of what we're holding on to. Whatever their consciousness is holding is an example of what we're bonded to. Okay? And so the universe just uses us, and I know that sounds negative, but it really is, we're being used in multiple different ways. And that's okay because we're being used for education. We're being used for teaching. We're teaching each other. And so if you can look at the person in front of you that's perhaps being passive aggressive, you're possibly bonded to lacking a voice, not wanting to speak up, right? So whatever they're holding in consciousness, so say that they're holding anger and frustration, or they're holding guilt, and they're showing up, and you're having this reaction to it, that is still something that you're not free of. And so it's something to see about yourself as, what is it about this that's triggering me? What is it about this relationship that I'm still bonded to? Could it is it truly love or is it familiarity? And there's a lot of lingo out there, right? That, in the self-help industry, in the spiritual community, like trauma bonding and all of that. So allow whatever language that is resonating with you right now, what this is reminding you of, to be an act of a practice for you at this moment in time. When you start looking at somebody else of like, okay, so this is how I have assessed them or judged them. I have judged them to be um, a miserable person. I have judged them to be erratic. I've judged them to be loving or whatever. You know, we can look at this as they are examples of what we're holding in consciousness, where we're not free from. And again, we're getting an opportunity to say, okay, well, I've worked through a lot of this stuff. And now I'm seeing you and matching you at a higher frequency. So we're doing this again, but you're a different person, but this is still the same things that I'm dealing with. It's just at a higher frequency and a different level, thus a different magnitude of it, right? So that's just something that you want to consider in this time is how are you going to meet this pattern and this cycle with this person or this situation and circumstance, whatever, wherever this is finding you in the situations that you're in. Are you going to be a little bit more mindful and say, you know what, I'm seeing that this is going to go this way, so I'm going to act in a different way that's more in alignment with where I want to be. So again, you can kind of look at it as, have I matured? Have I released the very lower levels of myself that acted in a way, and have I gone up to a different level? Or am I up here in many ways because I've worked on things so much that I'm lowering myself? It's funny how I did this, that I'm lowering myself to match them because of loneliness, because of, what the word that comes to me right now is like scarcity, that I'm going to lack community, or that I'm going to lack being loved, or being acknowledged, or being a part of something, which is a big thing for human beings. We have a deep need to belong, and yet do we belong in certain communities or with certain people? Are they matching us where we want to be? And that's just something to be very conscious of in this month, because it absolutely is showing up in that way. So again, we're being shown the scales of passive aggressiveness and assertiveness. Are we going to start coming into more balance within ourselves, and thus, externally as well? Because we're all just embodiments of consciousness, okay? So that's the first half of the month. And then when we get into, mid-month, and I want to say probably around the time of Scorpio, and I don't even know if I want to say Scorpio, it feels like about that transition phase, when we start shifting energy. So yeah, of course, around the 20th, right? So that is about the cusp time. Some of you actually might be considered or might be feeling more hermit-like, right? So that can look like you become more studious, or you want to start studying things more. You want to perhaps look at, material that you have studied in the past, and seeing how are you applying it today, because that's really where things can get a little bit mucky, where we can kind of think that we're doing things, in or we're logically understanding all of this stuff. It all makes sense, yada yada yada. But when it comes down to it, are we actually applying it? Are we practicing it? Right? And so that is something, again, to kind of consider. And so the word that actually also came to me was, the hermit and tranquila. So more tranquil energy. For those of you that don't know, I'm half Hispanic and I'm half Italian and full American, born America. So I speak Spanglish and I speak the cuss words of of Italian roots type of thing. So if you want to know more about that, you can check out my podcast on Luna Revolution in my YouTube or on Spotify, where I explain that a little bit more. Um, but in any case, the words that came to me was hermit and tranquila. So you're going to be more tranquil in this time as well, for some of you. Now, that means for some of you are going to be going more, and I don't want to say inward, but I do see people hanging out more in their home, kind of like I am today. That's why you're hearing the air conditioner going, because, we're in Arizona, or I'm in Arizona, and it's still 106 degrees on October 1st. Like, let's be real here. Like, that's just like absurd. So my air conditioner is going on like crazy. Um, and in any case, you might find yourself going home more to study, or maybe less on TV, less in distractions, and more wanting to learn. So studying your skills more, studying your hobbies more. Uh, the hermit is truly one that's turning into the teacher. And so the one that's becoming, I just see people studying more, Um, they're busy at home, but they want to be home. Whereas some people feel like they're isolated, so they just have to go home because they don't have anything else to do, type of thing. No, this is an energy that where you want to be home because all of the distractions, all of the things that are happening in the world, it's like, eh, I actually want to make use of my time instead of being on the TV, hearing all of this and that. I want to actually put my mind to something, which, is beautiful to feel because then that, and what I'm hoping is, comes in more analytical, critical thinking. But who's to say, right? To each his own, whatever. The other thing too is if you have to be more out in the world, perhaps because your work requires it, or if your work's not, I mean, if your work is at home, this is going to be a really good time. But if you have to be out with people, you might find yourself, which is funny because it's almost contradictory to what I was saying earlier, is that those that are lacking voice might find themselves more assertive, and yet mid-month, you might find yourself not using your voice as much, meaning you'll use it, right? But you're less talkative. You're not, you're just kind of more to yourself because it's more you're learning from your surroundings versus in the books. So yes, you will have some of us who are going to be having more assertive, interactions where we call ourselves or we call more assertion upon ourselves, right? Where we're like, we've got to put ourselves in this situation, or you get what I'm saying. I hope you do. And those who have to go to work, you might find yourself not being as talkative. I hope I explained that in the best way I can for now. But, um, something that, because I'm all about self study, understanding how we're contributing to possibly the mayhem, possibly the chaos, possibly the positive things, all of this stuff. Another thing that, came in as I was prepping for this is to encourage you all to understand where Scorpio actually lies in your personality. Because we all have that part of us where we have if you align with astrology, we all have aspects of every single one of these zodiacs, but where do they fall? Where does that fall in our personality? And so you can download a free birth chart using your birth time. There's other astrologers that do it for free also. I don't do that. I work from with doing astrology, I work from a different level where I look at kind of like the story of your journey, versus what other astrologers do. But you can always get that on for free and you can study that part. But when the sun moves into Scorpio, for those of you who are lacking self-awareness, this is going to be an important time to start seeing why have you become so observant and what are you becoming so observant in? And not even just observant, but the investigator. What are you investigating? What are you actually studying? And perhaps it correlates to that area in the life area in your birth chart. So it'll be interesting for you to start looking at that as how is Scorpio activated in my personality? Because one thing that is out there is people like to say, well, I don't like Scorpios, or I don't like this sign, or I don't like that sign because of these negative traits and how they are. But what I don't ever see out there is people explaining that that part of your personality is actually inside of you. You just got to find where it's at. And a part of that is, again, self study. So that's just another thing to look at. So more reflection and observing. You might find yourself a little less tolerant um, of things that aren't of value anymore. We're evolving as a whole, as a collective. We are evolving. So I'm curious, or you might find yourself a little bit more curious to observe what are you no longer curious about, or not curious, what are you no longer valuing anymore in your relationships or in just your experience overall. So to remember that our relationship is not really with other people. It's the unseen worlds that these individuals might be holding in consciousness. And so, what are we finding ourselves, looking at or observing in others? What are we not finding of value anymore? Again, I'm not, a huge astrologer. It's not my main jam. What I do understand is that Venus has moved into Scorpio, which could be what we are, why I'm picking up this energy, which is all about, Venus is about our value systems, and it can go into other areas. But the fact that it's in Scorpio is that Scorpio could be kind of assessing, well, what have I been holding of value in my mind and my inner psychology, and what no longer resonates. And I feel like by the full moon at the end of the month or towards the mid to end of the month, it feels like we're flushing it out and we're saying we're done with that. It's the past and there's no going back. That's what the energy feels like, is that there's no going back anymore. We're done. So that is in our own inner psychology, but our collective psychology as well. So it'll just be curious how it's interesting how this might show up for you. So those are the things for the month. I hope some of this resonates, and if it doesn't resonate today, it could meet you at another time, or you already moved through it. So again, happy Samhain or happy Halloween. I hope all of everybody is doing great. And if you're not in Arizona, I hope you're in a much cooler climate because good Lord, it's hot here. Otherwise, take care, everybody. My warmth and love to you. Bye for now.